Welcome again to today's Satsang, Gita Satsang, and I'd like to read a little bit from chapter 3. Krishna speaking to Arjuna, "Therefore be conscientious during the performance of all actions, whether physical or spiritual, to act without attachment. By activity, without self-interest, one attains the supreme. By the path of right action alone, Janaka and others like him attained perfection. To offer guidance to others, you too should be active. Whatever the superior being does, lesser beings imitate. His behavior sets the standard for right living in the world." So you can see, as Krishna was saying here, we all have a duty, in the sense to right action. We set the standard by which others will follow. And so we're not isolated islands in this world. We're all bound together to some extent, one person influencing and helping another, or not so, because one follows others. Something that I remember, a story that Swami Ananda spoke about. He was saying an incident when he was a young man. He was driving a car and he picked up a hitchhiker on the side of the road, and they rode along together, and the hitchhiker was telling him his story about his life and his hardships and the problems he was having and so on, all of it leading up to eventually the hitchhiker asking for a loan from Swami. He wanted asked for some money from Swamiji. And of course, Swami wasn't a Swami at that time, but as a young man. And so Swami let him off and gave him some money. It wasn't a lot of money, but he gave him some money. And the man, took down Swami's contact information, and he said, "I will for sure, definitely, I'll pay you back." I will pay you back because I don't want you to lose faith in human nature. And now I don't know if Swami actually said this or if he thought it. And he said, "I have no faith in human nature." And as it turned out, the fellow never heard from the fellow again. But if Swami, of course, understood that was likely outcome at the very beginning. But he wasn't giving it with the expectation of getting it back. He gave it because it was an act of charity, and he gave that money to him. So he had in a sense, he had no expectation, and that's the point I was making there. Now, when we read in the autobiography, we read too that, remember that story where Master leaves the ashram and he says he wants to go up in the Himalayas and he wants to find his liberation there, going up in the Himalayas, had this deep desire. And his guru tells him, there are many mountains are not going to give you what you are looking for, and very subtly advised him not to go. But Master went anyway, and of course had his adventures with the sleepless saint that we read about in the autobiography. And then he came back after some time. Now in the autobiography it says it was just a short period of time, for a few days, but Master actually told Swamiji that it was actually for quite a long time. He was gone for quite a long time. And when he came back, he tells Sri Yukteswar, kneels and touches his feet, and he says, "Sir, I apologize for going. You must have been very disappointed in me for leaving like that." And Sri Yukteswar says, "I had no expectations from you. I would not satisfy my own desires by having an expectation of you doing this or that." So it was neutral. So again, no expectations he had on Master there. But yet, contrary to that, we also there's another side of the teaching. I remember Swamiji was very strong about this. He would say we should, when he would use this phrase, he said, you should meet luck halfway. You should expect luck to come to you. You should have positive expectations in everything you do that you are going to be successful. Don't be indifferent. Have expectation that things are going to work out for you. And in that process of being expectant, things will. And actually, there is a great body of research that has shown that your expectations as you bring into life are often exactly what happens and are fulfilled. You, in a sense, set up a self-fulfilling prophecy by your expectations of life. Now, is this a contradictory teaching? Well, let me give you one example of expectations. Now, this is anecdotal, but it's an anecdotal story that kind of illustrates there's a great body of research that actually backs this up. A teacher takes vacation and has a substitute teacher come in for a week or 2 weeks, whatever it would be, a couple of weeks, comes in to take her place. Comes in, and before she goes, the teacher leaves a note, some notes about the class, and says, oh, this student, let's call him Student A. Student A is the best student in the class. Student A is the best student. He's very helpful. He's really, you're going to like him. He's really helpful, and just watch out for Student A. Then leaves another note, says, Student B, watch out for him because he's the terror of the class, and he's really unhelpful, and the opposite. And so these notes are on the desk. Well, of course, you know the story how I'm going here, where I'm going, but substitute teacher comes in and gets the notes mixed up. And Student B, who is supposed to be the bad student, she thinks he's the great student, and approaches him in a certain way and has that expectation for him. Student A, the opposite. Teacher comes back and she says, well, how'd it go? And then she reports back, oh, that Student B, you were so right. That guy was really good. He was really great. I really liked him. We had got along fine. But that other guy, he was not so good, just like you predicted. Well, of course, she got him mixed up. Now, this is an anecdotal story, but they have done studies on this exact thing, that the expectations that you bring in to a situation, particularly with people, you see, particularly with people, are often what determines the outcome that's going to happen after that. Somehow, it seems to be that way. Now, it can happen for positive and for negative. So what's the why does expectations, in one sense, Swami Sri Yukteswar is saying, I have no expectations. There was no sense of personal attachment in when Sri Yukteswar was speaking about that. Swami, for that hitchhiker, he had no attachment to it. What Sri Yukteswar wanted, obviously, if you look at the story in the autobiography, of course Swami Sri Yukteswar had expectations for Master. He knew he was there to train him for something, but it was not personal. It wasn't. Swami Sri Yukteswar's happiness was not going to be conditioned whether or not how Master behaved. It was his duty to train him. And the same thing Swami's was saying, he had no expectations. He was not going to be happy or sad if that fellow didn't pay. And he knew he wasn't going to pay, so he had written it off right at the very beginning. There was no personalness there, so there's no attachment to it. But an expectation in another person that's impersonal is actually very helpful. It's very helpful, and you can change other people and put into motion something through your own expectation of what the results of that other person is going to be. And now this is especially important for those of you who have children. Especially important for children. But any of you who are teachers, it's especially important how you approach, how you see, and how you behave, and your expectations for your students or for your children, because especially young people, they want to please somebody that they admire and respect. And a disciple wants to please the guru. And anybody that you look up to, and this is a natural thing. Each of us, and even as adults, there's a part of us that wants to please. Now, this is not always on the conscious level, but underneath, we do want to please other people let's say most of us want to please on a certain level. And we can pick up very subtle cues that are subliminal and not necessarily conscious. Now, obviously, this applies when we're dealing with other people of the expectations, and we can destroy children's hopes also by putting out that vibration of my expectations of you that you're going to fail. You're a failure. And now we may not say that, but you're always messing up. Why are you always messing up? Prem das. We don't necessarily say that, of course, to one another, but we can convey that. We can convey that by our thoughts, our attitudes, our expressions, and people begin to conform to our expectations of them. Now, with adults, with other people, this is quite obvious. And well, it's maybe not obvious, but it's very much been demonstrated to be very, very true. Now, it also applies, though, to life in general. If we approach life with an attitude of expectancy, positive expectancy that life is going to respond to us, somehow in a mysterious way, we tend to draw that to us. You can imagine, you go into life and you just feel that this is going to work out. I'm going to work out, and something that's happened, it's going to be a good day, the situation is going to be positive, versus that other person said, I don't know, it's going to be another bad day, I'm going to fail, it's not going to turn out right. Which one is likely to happen? We start to put into motion those very things that make what we do self-fulfilling. We prophesize the future through our very thoughts, attitudes, and behaviors that we approach life with, and that inevitably begins to come back towards us. Now, let's take this a little bit deeper. How do we approach our spiritual path? Do we approach our spiritual life with an expectation of success? Do I meditate with an expectation of success? Now, I'm not saying with a hope for success or a desire for success, but an attitude of success. And by that, what I'm speaking about here is success being the ability for us to reach our highest potential in life. The ability for God to come to us and respond to who we are, what we're doing, that contact, that closeness. As a child, a loving child approaches a loving parent, has the attitude that of course the parent's going to take care of me. Of course it's going to respond to me. I don't have to question it. The little child doesn't question that when he goes, to his mother, that the mother's going to take care of him. And do we have that attitude in our own spiritual life when we approach our meditation? Do we expect, God, I'm here, and that loving expectation that God is on our side? You remember that story that Swami used tell quite often. He wrote about it, about how Paramahansa Yogananda was traveling. He'd travel from Los Angeles down to Encinitas. His driver would drive him. One of the ashram residents would drive, and they would always stop at a sweet shop on the way, a pastry shop. They'd stop at the pastry shop, and it was a tradition. He'd like to get a shortbread. You know how they make that shortbread in Pune? Where's India? That short. He would get this version of the shortbread, and so he'd stop. He always get it there. So one day they stopped, and he'd get out, and he went into and the proprietress said to him, "Sir, I'm so sorry. We're all out. We don't have any shortbread." And Master just said, he sort of looked up and he kind of asked Divine Mother, "Why?" Why? He was surprised. Why? They didn't. Now, he had this expectation that, because he was asking why, not because he had a high desire for shortbread, but he was asking why. He said, "Now, I miscalculated, something didn't, I always stop for shortbread, and I mean, am I not in tune with what's the divine will here? Why did we stop?" And because he just felt that he was going to get shortbread, and so they stopped. So he said, he just stopped, but then he thought, well, and then he went outside, and just at that moment he went outside, he said he saw a flash of light come down from the heavens down onto the store. And the lady came running out of the store and said, "Sir, sir, sir, stop. I have this one bag of shortbread I was saving for another customer. It was the last one, I was saving it for her, but I can make some more. Here, you take it." And the Master just smiled, and that it was, now that's such a trivial thing. But in a sense, Swami used to say those trivial things were very meaningful because it wasn't a big deal, but Master had this, he was in tune with the divine flow, and he had this expectation that Divine Mother was going to provide for him. So he was wondering why. Just as we have expectations that are usually met. Do we expect the sun to rise tomorrow? Now, we may not see it because of clouds, but we expect the sun to rise. Now, if it didn't rise tomorrow, we'd go, "What?" Why? We go, "Why, Divine? It didn't come up today." So it's in the same way. You can see Master said, "This is strange. It didn't happen. Why?" And then, of course, maybe my watch was off, and then it did come up an hour later, and it did come up. So in the same way, we have that expectation that life is going to work a certain way. God is going to respond to us. When we're in tune with divine, when we have God in our heart, there's this expectation that, of course, God loves us. God's going to respond to us. God's our parent, our mother, our father. And that closeness, if we can bring that to our meditation, we find that then it's sweet. We have this sweet, loving relationship, and that's what we want to develop. Not an expectation in the negative sense but it's an impersonal, loving relationship. And so if we approach our meditation expecting success, in other words, expecting not some phenomena, but expecting to dive deep, as opposed to, well, here I am again. That never happens, and probably won't happen today either, but I'm here. You're not going to get anywhere that way. It just won't. You have to go in expecting good results, and the world begins to respond to us according to how we approach it. And you'll find this happens if you see other people expecting. We don't have time to go into stories about all this, but you expect certain results from other people, and they'll happen. Now, take this a little bit further. We have I think, a spiritual duty to see other people in their highest potential. And in that sense, have an expectation that, yes, God is your highest potential. I expect you to act that way, to manifest that, because that's who you are. And I have this quote here that kind of expressed that. This was by a German philosopher, Wolfgang von Goethe. He says, "If I accept you as you are, I will make you worse. However, if I treat you as though you are what you are capable of becoming, in other words, your potential, I help you become that. I draw it out of you." And this is what teachers do. Any good teacher sees the potential of their student and draws that potential. And I look back on my life going to school. I had some good teachers and some not so good. And I remember those good teachers, they kind of pulled the highest out of me. And I think this is what we can do to one another. Just because each of us have a relationship with each other, is we see each other according to our highest potential, that person's highest potential. And of course, we have to have our own understanding of that, but then we start to draw that out. And I know Swami was like that with people. He would see people very impersonally. It wasn't a matter I liked this person or that person. I mean, he felt compatible with some more so than others, but it wasn't like and dislike, and people sometimes ask me, well, did you like Swami? And I kind of think it's kind of an odd question. I didn't like Swami, because what does that mean? I like this person, I don't like that person. Did he like me? I don't think he liked me, because that's on a certain level, it's sort of beneath it, You look to each other, it's not a matter of liking, it's a matter of seeing a person according to what they could be. And then there's another quote from this was from Winston Churchill. He said, "I have found that the best way to get another person to acquire a virtue is to impute it to him." In other words, if you want to see somebody, let's say a child, you want to see a child is very... if you want to give that, help develop a virtue in that, like a kindness, see that person, that child as kind. Treat them as if they're a kind one. You start to bring it out, because we all have the potential for all of these virtues. And if you see it on the other way, you're just always a naughty kid. Well, we get what we ask for, and that's what we're going to find. So in this is what you might say the secret of, it's one of the secrets, of course, of human relationships, of being able to see each other and how we can act as an instrument of blessing to one another. But the secret here is non-attachment. Non-attachment in a personal sense of my happiness is going to be dependent upon whether you are kind or not. I hope you're kind. And I would like to see that kindness, but people being people, it may not happen. And it's not going, I'm still going to be who I am, and I'm going to continue to try to bring out kindness in another person, but there's no attachment there. It's seeing people at the highest octave of what they possibly could be, and to try to see that, and you begin to draw that out of them. That's the best way, one of the best ways, if not the best way, to actually bless another person. And I think this is what the Guru does. The Guru sees the disciple according to the highest level that they could be, and in that pulls it out of them. And that's what a real blessing is, to see them not as their personality. And so let's not, even with us, yes, we have to deal with these personalities, but that's not really who we are. Or something much more deep underneath that. And if we can try to see and bring that out of each other, Then in a Sangha, one helps the other. Each of us helps the other. And of course, avoiding those opposites of what that could be too, because those are just temporary. Even the mistakes that people make, it's not really who they are. It's just a temporary, you might like say, a little dust on the mirror. With a little bit of blowing it, we can blow it very quickly off. And we can help each other that way by blessing each other in this regard. So many blessings to you this evening. Let's look at each other in that highest vein.